Our name is Ghosts Want You Dead. The very air we breathe is sodden and sultry. We gasp for breath as we cower from the cruel punishments of an angry sun. The days become increasingly unbearable with each passing night. We yearn for the embrace of cool autumn air, but it evades us longer and longer with each coming year. That is to say, it has been miserably hot, and that is going to continue. Next week, we're only due one day with a high below 100 degrees, and that one is still going to be around 98. I hate summer, which, according to the extended forecast, is likely to last until mid-October. Bleh.
Yeah.
By the way, I'm Matthew.
And I'm Rebekah, and I also hate summer.
She likes it more than I do,
I do
except it's
like the
bad for
heat,
her.
but the heat doesn't like me. Like, I enjoy, in theory, being all warm like a lizard on a rock because I don't do well with cold bones. But I have several health conditions that make the heat pretty hostile toward my system and tend to have some fainting goat episodes if I don't drink my salt water.
Well, come October, we'll have decent temperatures again.
That will be so nice.
Now it is time for Matthew is obsessed with the episode numbers. This week we have some wonky episode numbering, or rather, we actually have for the last couple of weeks because there was an AFTRA strike in 1967. That's the American Federation of Television and Radio Artists. And that threw the broadcast schedule off by a day. So episode 206 aired a day late, and then everything was subsequently thrown off. So to get back to our routine of covering a broadcast week of the show at a time, this week we're discussing episodes 221 through 225, but episode 225 is also 226. That episode is double numbered in order to get the episode numbering scheme back on track. However, episode 225 slash 226 actually aired on Monday, May 8th, 1967. And so we're doing Tuesday through Monday episodes instead of Monday through Friday, which is interesting for cliffhanger reasons to finish with the Monday episode when the Friday cliffhanger pays off.
Yeah.
No, we're going back to how it's supposed to be. So next week, we're covering episodes 227 through 230. And then after that, we'll be back to talking about a broadcast week of the show at a time. I do understand that no one cares about this but me, but I have to tell you.
That's fair.
Also, we have Dark Shadows News, which is fun for a 60-year-old show to have so much news. Maybe people will start listening to our podcast.
And watching the show and hanging out with us.
Next week is the 60th anniversary celebration of the show in Los Angeles that we've already talked about, but we can't afford to go to. So we look forward to seeing whatever bits of it pop up on social media. But in addition to the animated series being in development, it was announced today that MPI Home Video is going to be releasing a chunk of 40 episodes on Blu ray and they're going to be enhanced somehow. The release says an enhanced viewing experience with sharper, cleaner images following restoration work by video specialist Zach Smothers.
Well, that'll be fun.
This increases the picture resolution and removes video dropouts and artifacts like the scratches and crackles and such. So, more visual detail thanks to sympathetic adjustment to the brightness of darker areas of the picture.
I don't know. I'm kind of fond of all of that.
Yeah, I do appreciate the vintage charm.
It will be fun to see it in more definition, though.
Further in the release, MPI tells us that attendees of the Dark Shadows 60th anniversary celebration will be able to purchase these Blu-rays in advance of its release, which doesn't take place till November this year. And on the DVD, or rather the Blu-ray, they're going to have the same special features that I guess already exist on existing DVD options for the show. This release is going to start with episode 210, and it'll be episodes 210 through 250. They did the same thing that we did with our little YouTube video, catching everyone up on what happened in the first 210 episodes. There's a 15-minute introduction on the DVD that fills in that gap, which, boo, justice for the beginning. I love those episodes.
Me too. I've enjoyed it a great deal, although I have some things to say about that later in this episode.
Anyhow, the Blu-ray will also feature video interviews that I assume are already available on other DVDs from Jonathan Frid, Catherine Lee Scott, and John Carlin, who is Willie. So, yeah, that's coming out in November, or if you're going to the Los Angeles 60th anniversary celebration, you can get it there.
Well, neat. I do wish we'd been able to go, maybe at their 75th, if we're still.
Well, they did say this is going to be the last Dark Shadows festival,
Aw.
unless fans organize one. Anyway, I've been going on and on for 12 minutes. Do you have anything to tell the people before we start talking about the show?
I don't really. I've been ill this week, and so I sort of am hazy on any media I've consumed. I've mostly just been listening to the book for book club and thinking a lot about the Vampire Lestat business. Watched the end of that show and enjoyed that a great deal. And I don't really have any interesting things to talk about.
That's okay. Shall we talk about Dark Shadows then?
That's pretty interesting. Episode 221, Victoria Winters tells us folks up at Collinwood know the vampire, but Maggie doesn't. Maggie's in the cafe and it's late at night and she's taking off her little hat and locking up and drinking some old coffee and getting ready to bounce. She turns the lights off and gets her coat and she's fussing with her hair in the hallway mirror in the hotel lobby. Barnabas sneaks up behind her and she shouts out. Opening credits. He apologizes for scaring her and asks if he can get some coffee. She says she's closing up, and then he asks if there's somewhere else in town he could get coffee. And she's like, small town, bub. Everything closes early. He goes on about the night and loneliness and apologizes for taking her time. She decides to give him some old coffee she hadn't cleaned out of the pot, which I thought was like, oh, I've got some old coffee. But
Her closing up was interesting because she was drinking coffee and just leaves her dirty cup and saucer on the counter.
well, I imagine she's probably
Open,
opening, so
yeah.
she's like, fuck it, I'll just leave it right here. I have done that when I've opened and closed in restaurant and retail years past. You leave a mess for yourself. Anyway, they go into the dining room and have their coffee. He discloses he's a distant Collins cousin and has moved into the old house. And Maggie's like, oh, that's wild. She goes on to tell him about how it's haunted, and he says he doesn't believe in all of that. She shows interest in his cane, which is a pretty cool wolf handle made of gold and silver. Matt had a fun nugget about this that he was telling me.
Well, first off, as we'll talk about in later this episode, this is funny foreshadowing, but also one of the bits of IMDb trivia about the show is apparently they had to buy dozens of copies of that cane because Jonathan Frid kept losing them.
I thought that was fun. Maggie goes to heat up their coffee, then dogs start howling and making Halloween noises, and it freaks her out. And she's like, they were doing this last night too. And he's all, were they? And doing his slightly creepy, not that creepy thing. She says, I wonder what they were howling about. And he's all, yes, I wonder. All spooky like. And that was pretty fun.
They sit and drink their coffee. I wasn't really paying attention to does Barnabas actually drink the coffee? I'm not
Oh,
sure about the vampire lore.
I didn't think about that.
I'll go back and look. I'm not sure if he can ingest human refreshments, but we haven't learned the
Oh,
vampire lore yet.
well, I'll say that at least later he's drinking alcohol.
Oh, okay.
Remember, like, just
I know they're at the
episode.
bar. I just don't remember actually seeing him drink anything.
I
But
don't necessarily either, but he's also been to dinner. Surely,
anyhow, they're sitting and drinking their coffee, and Maggie is complaining about the howling dogs, wishing that they would stop. She finally introduces herself by name and brings up that her father is an artist. Barnabas takes his leave and tells Maggie he hopes to see her again. She agrees and closes up again, and Joe enters hollering for her. He stopped by because turns out another girl was just assaulted in the street. A man tried to grab her, but she got away. So Joe didn't want Maggie walking home by herself. She mentions having had a last minute customer who only left a few seconds before Joe entered, so surely they would have passed one another, but Joe says they did not. She catches him up on the gossip and describes Barnabas Collins as nice, quiet, polite, sad, and lonely. She says that she likes him. Joe says he's jealous, and Maggie is cute and is like, well, I like that too. He suggests they head over to the whale. On the way out, Maggie realizes that Barnabas left his cane that he could never possibly be parted with in the diner. Maggie wants to return it now, but Joe is skeptical, saying it's late. Can't we just do that tomorrow? But she talks him into it. The dogs howl, and Maggie is scared. Joe is puzzled. They exit.
at Collinwood, they're knocking on the door to the old house, but there's no answer. They start to leave, but the door creaks open and Joe calls hello a bunch. Maggie wants to go in, but Joe is hesitant. They enter and he's still hollering out for somebody. He comments that the front room is fixed up since last he saw it, but that the house is still relatively unlivable. He goes to look upstairs and tells Maggie to stay and wait. Old Barnabas shows up and sneaks up on her again. He appreciates her bringing the cane. She says, we didn't want you to be without it. And he's all, we? She's like, yeah, my boyfriend Joe.
He seems real annoyed when he realizes somebody else is with her.
Yeah, he is not pleased. And on cue, Joe comes downstairs and Barnabas is clearly surprised and annoyed by this, but is polite. And Joe is anxious to get out of there. And so they leave.
Barnabas is like, you guys want to hang out? Can I offer you anything? But they're like, no, 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 it's late.
Yeah.
After they leave, Willie emerges from the shadows, asking why they were there. Barnabas is like, Willie, you're supposed to be out abducting girls. Get back to work. Willie wants to know what Barnabas has planned for Maggie, and he's told that it's none of his business.
Back at the Evanses, Maggie and Joe are going to have a nightcap. She asks what he thinks of Barnabas, and Joe likes him fine, I guess, but Maggie says she likes him and he's nice, but when they were alone, she was kind of afraid of him. Back at the old house, Willie is accusing Barnabas of stalking Maggie intentionally, and Barnabas puts Willie in his place and sends him off to do his evil biddings. Then he proceeds to, like all good Collinses, window gaze. He is staring out of his window, or maybe into Maggie's window, or rather both.
Back at the Evanses, Joe is asking what time he should pick Maggie up tomorrow, but she's distracted, also looking out the window, saying she has an uneasy feeling that she's being watched. Back at the old house, Barnabas stares spookily and dreamily out the window to a soundtrack of wolf howls and a theremin sting before the end credits.
Episode 222.
Victoria Winters tells us about the mixing of the past and the present or something. Also, the old house is creepy. At the old house, Willie walks into the front room lighting a candle when he's surprised by a knock at the door, and he immediately hides and cowers. Vicky just lets herself right in, shouting out for Mr. Collins. Willie startles her from behind, a trick that Barnabas must be teaching him. Vicky wants to know what Willie's doing there.
He says that he has met Barnabas changing a tire out on the road and now he works for him. Vicky's like, "Well, you seem like you've changed a lot. Good for you, bud." She's come to invite cousin Barnabas to dinner at the main house, and Willie is more concerned about his master's breakfast plans and getting her the fuck out of there before he wakes up, as it's almost sunset.
Somewhere in the middle of that, the opening credits happened.
Yeah, I don't remember when.
It was right after Willie begs her to get out of the old house right now, opening credits.
He shoos her away, and Barnabas does wake up and come and give Willie a hard time about being very helpful to Vicky and not so helpful to him.
Yeah, Barnabas catches him and is threatening about Willie seemingly trying to protect Vicky from him.
At the Evanses', it's dark and empty, and someone is trying to frantically get in the door, and that someone is Maggie, acting completely terrified. She's breathing heavy and taking off her coat, and then there is a knock at the door.
The timpani start up and she calls out, asking who it is. Turns out it's Barnabas. She collects herself and answers the door, but she is clearly afraid, and he is clearly a bit annoyed at her being afraid. He asks to come in, and she invites him in, still sounding terrified. He asks what's wrong, and she explains that she had a feeling she was being followed just now. He's like, "Oh, really? Weird. I'll take a look." And he peers outside for like 2 seconds and is like, "Nope, nothing to see out there. Totally wasn't me following you just now." She is seemingly relieved. She tells him about that other girl being attacked a few nights ago near her job. Barnabas acts clueless about it, but suggests that, gee, it must be somebody from out of town if this has never happened before.
You know, a stranger, someone new, who's not me.
About 6'1", wears an Inverness cloak.
Yeah.
Maggie brings up the chupacabra animal attacks. Barnabas changes the subject, asking to see some of Sam's work. He evaluates it positively, and Maggie's like, "Oh, cool. Somebody likes these motel paintings." On cue, Sam enters and Maggie makes the introductions. Sam is also worried about Maggie getting home safely and delivers the news that a second girl was attacked in the street about an hour ago. He explains to Maggie and Barnabas that it was similar to what happened the other night, but as the stranger grabbed the girl, car headlights shone on them and the perpetrator ran away. Anyway, Sam was nervous, so he stopped by the inn to pick Maggie up from work, but just missed her, so he was worried about her walking home alone. Barnabas explains that Maggie thought she was followed home, definitely not by him, but someone else. Sam insists that Maggie take the car to and from work from now on. Barnabas gets around to his reason for visiting. He has come to hire Sam to paint a portrait of him. Sam is interested, and Barnabas asks how much, and Sam hems and haws and is like, well, that depends on how much time it takes and what materials I use, and then also the frame that you pick, and I do the framing, and he won't give a price. So Barnabas offers him $1,000, which would be roughly $10,000 today. Sam eagerly agrees. Barnabas wants Sam to come to his house to paint. And Sam's like, well, I mean, I guess I could. All my shit's here, but if that's what you want, I'll come over tomorrow morning. Barnabas is like, no, 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 no. I'm real excited about this. Let's start tonight, like right now.
And could we also only ever do it at night, please?
Sam is like,
Okay.
yeah, I guess, but it's easier when there is natural light to work with. But
Yeah.
I mean, if you want to pay $1,000 for me to paint your picture in the dark, then that's on you, buddy. So Barnabas leaves, telling Sam he'll see him in a bit. And a bit later, Maggie drops Sam off at the old house and helps him get set up. I don't think it came up before now. Maybe Sam just already knew this, but also there's not electricity at the old house. So, in addition to no natural light, he is doing this painting entirely by candlelight, which cannot be easy on the eyes for a like 50-year-old painter.
That would hurt my baby eyes.
Becca's also a 50-year-old
I am not
painter.
yet a
Close
50-year-old
enough.
painter.
I'm just teasing you.
I've got a little bit to go.
it-
It's close. It's getting there.
It's still the time of year where you're very old
I am very old until
for
your
another
birthday.
couple months.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Maggie drops Sam off and helps him get set up. Barnabas tells her that he doesn't want her to get back out in the middle of the night, so he'll see to it that Sam gets home. Maggie leaves, and Sam and Barnabas get to work.
Maggie pops over to visit with Vicky and talk about how nice and handsome and harmless Barnabas and his portrait are. Back in the old house, it's near morning, and Sam is finishing up. But Barbie is just what I put in my notes because my phone won't let me type Barnabas right every time.
You told us last
But I
week.
don't think that we need to call him Barbie, but maybe we do. But anyway, Barbie's trying to kick him out before sunrise. Sam notices a dimple or something that he hadn't noticed before and is still trying to work. And
And he's like, yeah, I'll go, but let me just get this one last thing real
right,
quick.
yeah. And Barnabas is like, dude, you gotta go for completely normal reasons. He starts painting again anyway and turns to talk to him, but he has vanished. And Willie is suddenly there. And Sam's like, why are you suddenly here, Willie? And what the fuck? Didn't you leave?
Willie tells Sam that, oh, yeah, Barnabas just left, but he told me to take you home. But Sam's like, no, I need to talk to him to schedule the next sitting. That's when Willie says, oh, Barnabas just said to come after sundown. And Sam repeats it slowly. He's like, after sundown. Suspicious face. Close up on the partial portrait to a theremin sting. End credits.
Episode 223. Victoria Winters says the fog is clinging to the cliffs, and Willie is clinging to Collinwood, and Vicky is telling on him. Vicky and Liz are in the drawing room where she's been telling Liz about Willie being at Collinwood. Liz is like, well, I told that motherfucker never to step foot on the grounds again, so I'm gonna go kick him out. She tells Liz that she saw him at the old house And Liz is like, oh, well, Barnabas knows how to handle a man like Willie. And I was like, I bet he does. And she makes a funny face too. The whole bit was fun. She says maybe he's already handled it and kicked him out. Again, the amount of faith and trust they are putting in the stranger is just wild. But
Yeah, also, I loved in this bit how they do the teasing out of things to extend the scenes,
yes,
where the way Vicky relates this fact to Liz is frustrating. She doesn't say, hey, your weird cousin hired Willie to work at the old house. She's just like, I saw Willie. Lets Liz go on about it for 2 minutes and then is like, oh, no, no, he works there.
she's like, I didn't tell you where I saw him. Dun, dun. And it's just
Yeah.
like, this could be a two.
This could have been an email.
Yeah, there's a lot of scenes that could be emails. But it's still fun. Like the writing is enjoyable with it. It's a fun romp.
It is, I
But
think.
anyway,
But
Vicky goes on to say that in fact Barnabas is handling things by letting Willie live there, and Liz is shocked.
well, Liz is pissed and she's ready to go right over there and chase Willie off. And Vicky goes on to explain that Willie met Barnabas out on the road and helped him change a tire and told Barnabas that he was sick and looking for work. And Liz chimes in amusingly that Willie's illness has been awfully convenient for him, seemingly only cropping up when he needs something. Liz prepares to go down to the old house to be like, Barnabas, what the fuck? That dude is a creep. But David interrupts because Vicky is late for homeschool and he wants to go to the old house, but Liz tells him no.
He's bummed his dilapidated, ghost filled playground has been usurped by cousin Barnabas and he's not allowed to go play anymore. Liz tells Vicky to tell Miss Johnson she will give her the dinner menu when she gets back. And Vicky sends David upstairs because she's got to deliver that message. Before he goes up, he's trying to fish information from her about what Liz wants to talk to Barnabas about. And that to him, she seemed mad at Barnabas. Vicky says that Liz is not mad, but he says he kind of is, and that he doesn't like that he's moved into his old luxury ghost fort. He hopes that he hasn't changed it too much. At the old house, we see the draperies and the well furnished living room very much so changed from David's Ghost Kingdom decor. We hear the door, assuming it's Liz, but no one is answering. She lets herself in and calls for Barnabas.
I guess this is just maybe an element of it was the 60s, or
People just busted up into people's
maybe
houses.
it's the fact that it's not like a random neighbor, it's the guest house on her property. So, but
It's still
e-
weird though. Like,
everybody seems to think it's perfectly fine to just bust in there.
I do think that is odd.
Well, I guess Maggie and Joe did it too. So it's not just like, oh, well, it's sort of my house.
Well, theirs was for like ghost reasons though,
Yeah.
like creaking open doors and things.
Anyhow, Liz has let herself in and calls out for Barnabas. She stumbles onto the partial portrait and regards it suspiciously, and then she sort of just looks around, surveying the improvements that have been made.
And then a door slams, and it's David. He has creeped over against his instructions and skipped homeschool.
Naughty David.
Yep. He is looking around too, and he's mad that it's different, and he feels that it's different. He notices that Josette's portrait is gone, and he's like, that's what's different. And he's going to go barge through this man's house and look for the painting, and Liz tries to shut that down.
I have to jump in because we need to do one of your jokes. Yeah, David says that it feels as though not only has the old house been tidied, it feels like a different place. And Liz dismisses this as his imagination. David eventually realizes that the portrait of Josette has been removed from above the fireplace. He also points out that he can no longer detect the aroma of Josette's ghost stank. Remember that?
I do remember ghosting. I forgot that he mentioned about the ghosting.
Liz continues to dismiss him, and then David heads off to rummage through Barnabas's house to try and find the painting to put it back.
He's trying to explain to her how fucked up it is that Josette is gone and not watching over them anymore, and that his cousin stole his ghost.
Liz flubs her line while trying to say that this partial portrait of Barnabas that's sitting in the middle of the front room is probably going to go over the fireplace where Josette used to live.
At the main house, Vicky and Burke are looking at Barnabas's portrait. Burke is concerned that he has hired Willie and that is weird. Burke kind of shit talks Barnabas and is like, well, he must be a real dummy to hire Willie. And I think you can tell he's a little bit jealous of the new handsome stranger who's causing concern and mystery. Like, shit, that was my gig.
Yeah, and Vicky is also like, he's not dumb, he's very smart and also hot and polite. And Burke's like, God damn it.
Yeah,
But
it's pretty funny.
Burke has also lied to Vicky,
Yeah.
saying that Liz was expecting him.
But really, he had just dropped by to talk to her about some business things.
But he assures Vicky that Liz likes it when he drops by because she's not used to anybody standing up to her or challenging her, so she gets a kick out of him doing it. Which may be true, but she has said repeatedly, "You're not welcome in my house," and he keeps coming back against her wishes.
Well, that's not cool, man.
Burke eventually gets around to telling Vicky that he dropped by because Liz has done something very weird and out of character and he wants to ask about it. When Liz returns, she leads Burke into the drawing room, scolding him and telling him he knows he shouldn't be here. But he demands to know why she sold a piece of seafront land to somebody called Hackett. She wants to know how he knows about that. And he's like, of course I know. We're all up in each other's business all the time, even though the revenge obsession thing is over, like old habits and whatnot.
Yeah.
Burke warns her that Hackett is going to ruin that seafront property and going to damage the local wildlife. And if he had known she was selling, he would have bought it himself and left it alone. He suggests that she only sold this bit of land because she was in need of fast cash. And he tells her he would happily have paid her cash for the property. She's offended, like, are you implying that I'm a poor? Burke implies that perhaps she was forced into selling the property, and he eventually spits out that he thinks Jerry Maguire is behind all of this. Of course, Liz denies it. Burke offers to buy any other property that she might want to sell, but Liz just tells him to mind his own business. On the way out, Burke also brings up how it's weird that Barnabas hired Willie. He offers to help Barnabas throw Willie out, but Liz is like, no, Barnabas is perfectly capable of handling Willie.
And she's like a kind of total stone cold bitch about it and is like, he's very self sufficient and he's a Collins, a true Collins. And you can tell poor Burke's feelings are hurt and he's upset about being replaced. But I kind of loved her. She's like rubbing it in, like, you are poor, you want to be a Collins and you're not. Nah. It was just fun.
On the way out, Burke runs into a pouting David. Burke asks what's wrong, and David says he thinks he might be mad at Barnabas, but he's conflicted because actually he really likes Barnabas. But he's also angry that he changed the old house and got rid of Josette. David explains he can overlook the fact that they did some cleaning, like it's okay they dusted off the cobwebs, but not that Josette's painting and therefore the ghost of Josette are gone. Burke makes a practical suggestion and is like, oh, well, did you ask Barnabas about it? Maybe he'll put it back. David says, no, he's having his own portrait painted, so that's probably going to go in its place above the fireplace. Burke again has a practical solution to David's problem and is like, well, just ask your cousin if you can have the painting. If he's going to put it away, you might as well have it. David thinks this is a great idea, and he's ready to go look for Barnabas and ask right now, so he sets out. Burke lingers in the foyer and stares down at the painting that's totally been here this whole time so that we can do another match cut to the partial portrait in the old house as David again creeps in the front door without even knocking. These people have no manners.
Well, I will say that this has been David's spot for years, and I can understand David more than anybody else creeping in.
He does call out to Barnabas and he looks around a little bit, but outside, those spooky dogs begin their howling again. It is funny to think about. There actually are no dogs. One of Willie's jobs he has to do is he's outside with the tape recorder and has to hit play on the Halloween sound tape
That's
whenever
amazing.
vampire business is about to
That is
happen.
very funny.
But anyway, David seems scared and he calls out for Josette, saying that he thinks he's afraid, as if he's never been afraid before, and this must be what that feels like. The dogs get louder and the front door slams shut on its own, and David can't open it, just like what happened to Vicky that one time. The dogs are going nuts. The theremin is going nuts, and David looks terrified. End credits. Episode 224. Victoria Winters checks in to let us know that it's nighttime and also cold, but not weather cold. This is like metaphorical cold. In the old house, David bangs on the doors, frantically trying to escape. The dogs stop abruptly, and David looks confused and still a little scared. He turns around to find Barnabas looming above him. Opening credits. And rather than being scared, David is just like, oh, hey, I can't get the door open. No, sorry, I busted into your house. Just, I can't get out.
Yeah, can't get out.
Barnabas walks over and casually opens the door, just like he did when he pulled this trick on Vicky. David closes the door again and tries it for himself. Sure enough, it's working just fine now. David said that he was scared because of the howling dogs and asks if Barnabas heard them. He says that he did. It was probably just a stray. David's like, that was totally several dogs. Barnabas points out that, oh, are you a little baby? It seems you've been crying. And David's like, nuh-uh.
That's one way to shut David down because he had toxic masculinity and all. He doesn't like to be seen as vulnerable.
David asks about the portrait of Josette and wants to know why it was moved and where it went and if he can have it. Barnabas says he cannot have it. It has to stay at the old house, but he explains that it is going to be hung up in another room, and he promises David that once that room is ready, he can come over and see it anytime he wants. But the room isn't ready yet and won't be for a while. They're interrupted by Willie, and David, the only person who likes Willie, is happy to see him. While Willie is polite, he's not particularly excited to see David, and it just tells him it's late and you need to get home.
He seems a little protective of him too in that though, where he's got his hand on his shoulder and is kind of trying to usher him out because he's like, I don't know, is this man going to eat this boy?
Willie asks David if he's okay walking home alone, and he says that he is as long as those dogs are gone. David steps outside, and Barnabas scolds Willie to stop being such a little bitch, telling him that he worries too much. Barnabas shouts out the door to David, telling him to wait, and he'll walk him back to the main house. And then he looks pointedly back at Willie, clearly being like, "Oh, you don't think I should be alone with that little boy? Well, check this out." Back at the main house, Liz is confronting Jerry Maguire about Willie. He's like, "What about him? He left like 3 episodes ago." Liz corrects him and delivers Vicky's old house spy report. Jerry's like, "Well, shit, I'll do something about this right now. Also, by the way, Liz, I am ready for you to show me the money again." She says that she will, and it's going to take a few days. She has opened up a Swiss bank account for him, and he's tickled at this. She stares dramatically at the window while he gloats about blackmailing her before leaving her to stare some more. David and Barnabas come in. David explains about Josette's portrait, and Liz is like, "Yeah, this little weirdo is obsessed with that painting. Any painting, really. You should have heard how he cried about the magic prophetic ghost painting of his bird witch mother when it was burned. Kids, right? Anyway, I'm gonna need you to fire Willie." Barnabas is like, "Why? He's doing a great job." But Liz explains, and Barnabas is like, "Oh, yeah, I know all about his rapey ways and his stabbing Burke and all of that, but people can change, and he's good at renovations. He's been very well behaved since I Renfielded him." Barnabas guarantees that Willie won't be any trouble any longer, and he can promise that. But if she insists, he will fire him, even though he prefers they give him a second chance. He makes sure to emphasize, "But it's totally your decision. I'll do whatever you say, but here's why you're wrong." "But I defer to you, but you're wrong."
Yeah, he's pretty smooth. He's a smoothie.
She agrees that they can give him a second chance. This is another one of those, "Hey, in case you hadn't noticed, I'm a vampire" moments where Barnabas is clearly like, "Oh no, I can definitely control him." At the old house, Jerry Maguire knocks on the door. Willie answers and is surprised to see him, but Jerry barges in and asks Willie about his new job. He vaguely teases him about being a servant. Jerry grabs Willie by the collar and demands to know what he's up to. Willie says he's just trying to turn over a new leaf, get a fresh start, but Jerry doesn't buy it. He demands to know what's really going on. But, as is his habit, Barnabas magically sneaks up behind them and spookily intones, "I'll tell you exactly what's going on. It's very simple. I'm a Dracula and he's my Renfield, but also my Matthew Morgan and my Mrs. Johnson. Does that clear it up?" Jerry's like, "Why did you creep up on me? That was creepy." Barnabas offers to explain the details of Willie's new job. He sends Willie out on a chupacabra errand, and Jerry's like, "Willie isn't really the serving type." But Barnabas is like, "Oh no, he is now since the Renfielding." At the Evanses is Sam enters, ready to head over to the old house to paint. Sam complains about painting by candlelight, but says that the money is too good to make too much of a fuss about it. He notices that Maggie is on edge and asks if she's worried about all those girls being attacked. He offers to stay home with her if she wants, but she insists that she's fine and sends him on his way. In her bedroom, which we remarked while we were watching the show is bigger than the entire rest of the house. Like
Yeah.
their set proportions were weird. She looks nervous as she brushes her hair. She looks nervously out the window and finally gets into bed, then glances nervously at the window again before laying down. At the old house, Barnabas is praising Sam's progress and talking about what a good job he's doing. Sam bitches a little bit about painting in the dark and how this would be easier by daylight. Barnabas says he just wants to do it like he did 200 years ago. Oops, I mean my ancestor.
Mhm.
And Barnabas changes the subject, reminding Sam about how hot his daughter is.
Yeah, that's a weird bit.
Back at the Evanses, Maggie tosses and turns fitfully in bed, and the camera goes all hazy and wobbly, and the timpani and strings warn us that shit is getting spooky as we enter Maggie's dream. She wanders what appears to be a foggy cave and does a very choreographed looking circle around some rocks before coming upon a coffin which opens by itself. Maggie screams and screams, and she's real good at screaming. When we see inside the coffin, dead Maggie is also occupying it. She screams, and her screaming face becomes a skeleton.
I laughed straight up out loud at those old effects. It was for the time, I imagine it was amazing and actually pretty good and pretty dope, but it was funny to look at like some kind of like acid dream, like skeletons. I loved it.
Back in her bedroom, Maggie wakes and screams and screams and screams before the end credits. Episode 225, which is also episode 226. Victoria Winters updates us about the time of day. It's night and also filled with a nameless terror or something. Maggie is repeating her wobbly camera nightmare. Again, she wakes screaming, but this time we see her reach for the phone. She's whispering prayers that Joe answers the phone. He does. She begs him to come over. And this is funny because she doesn't say why. And she knows everybody is panicked because somebody is attacking all the girls. But she's just like, come over, I need you right away. And I'm not going to tell you it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I feel like that was a little wild. Joe, is long patient and or what is the
Long
long
suffering.
yeah. Joe's very long suffering with crazy women. He's already had a run with Carolyn, so I'm sure he's used to some histrionics, but that is like quite a like
I
I
wouldn't
know there are
say
women
that's.
being kidnapped and I sound terrified like I might be being kidnapped, but I'm not going to tell you that it was a terrifying dream. Like call your boyfriend,
Well,
have him come comfort you
uh,
for sure.
Joe
But
is nice. She could have said, I had a really bad dream and I'm scared. Can you come over? And he would have
he
said, yes, I will.
100% would have because Joe is the best man ever that ever existed that didn't exist.
Anyway, he promises to come right away before the opening credits. At the Blue Whale, the bartender busses tables as Maggie and Joe enter. They seat themselves and Joe orders their drinks. Maggie apologizes and she's a little embarrassed about being a fraidy cat. She warns Joe that he's going to think this is silly and then explains about her skeleton nightmare. She says that she knows it's childish and she shouldn't have called him because of a nightmare when she is a grown up lady. But she elaborates about the dream and her feelings in the dream. Joe is like, weird. What do you think all that's about? She doesn't have an immediate answer, and he wonders if maybe this is about all of the girls being snatched up in the streets. Barnabas and Sam enter. Barnabas is again praising Sam's work. When Barnabas greets Maggie, she freaks out and spills her drink and immediately starts apologizing. Barnabas is being very nice and polite, and Maggie is trying to hide the fact that it's freaking her out. Barnabas goes on again about the virtues of the night. Joe and Maggie excuse themselves to go dance. Barnabas goes on and on again to Maggie's dad, Sam, about how very hot she is, and this is weird. Barnabas,
Yeah,
conf-
that whole conversation creeped me out.
Barnabas confesses to Sam that he's jealous of Joe. After the dance, Maggie glances over at the table, gets scared again, and asks Joe if they can go drink at the bar. Joe is like, well, I mean, we can, but that's kind of rude. Like, they just got here.
And Barnabas bought them drinks, so, like,
Yeah, she
yeah.
sends Joe back over to explain that they just want some privacy, like to canoodle or something. Joe brings up the dream as to why she's still scared, and she implies that now she's scared of Barnabas, not the dream. She's like, yeah, the dream. That's it. That's why I'm freaking out right now. Totally not the vampire.
Yeah.
Burke enters and Maggie invites him to join her and Joe, but Joe points out, now that would be really fucking rude after you just made me go tell Barnabas that we want to be alone, to be like, oh no, we'll hang out with Burke, just not you. He asks Maggie if she's had a fight with Sam, and maybe that's why she doesn't want to sit over there. But she says no. And he's like, well, what is it then? Is it Barnabas? But she doesn't want to explain. Over at the table, Burke and Barnabas are getting acquainted. Barnabas says that Willie is sorry for his previous behavior. And Sam agrees, supporting him, and is like, no, Willie really has changed. He's very different now. Barnabas gives the same assurances he delivered to Liz to Burke now. Over at the bar, Joe and Maggie are preparing to leave, and Maggie says she feels better and she's ready to get back to bed. Joe wants to say goodnight, at least, to the folks over at the table, but Maggie starts to freak out and doesn't want to go over there. When Joe points out, you are being very fucking weird, she gives in and goes over with him to say good night. And she says good night to everybody, and Barnabas says good night. And then as she turns to walk away, he's like, Maggie? She says, yes. And he ominously wishes her sweet dreams, like, I totally gave you that nightmare. Ha 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 ha. She thanks him, sounding suspicious. Back in Maggie's room, she starts to get into bed again, reluctantly. And then she gets up and sits in an armchair. And when Sam knocks on the door, she grabs a book to pretend to be reading. Sam calls her on it, pointing out that the book is upside down and he wants to know what's wrong, but she won't admit that anything is. He tries to send her to bed, and she's resistant. She denies being frightened and says good night. She gets in bed, turning out the light, and the Halloween dogs immediately begin to howl as we cut back to the Blue Whale, where Barnabas is showing off his wolf cane to Burke at the bar. Burke wants to hold it, and Barnabas obliges. Burke remarks about Barnabas taming our Willie, and that is funny because dick jokes. I said to Rebekah, I said, he could tame my Willie. Barnabas looks distant and preoccupied. He remembers suddenly he has something to do and abruptly excuses himself. Back in Maggie's room, she tosses and turns and clutches her throat as the dogs howl outside and the phantom heartbeat starts up. We see Barnabas's shadow made distinctive by his cloak outside the double doors into her room. Then Barnabas lets himself into Maggie's room and looms over the bed. He bares his teeth to a theremin sting. End credits. We did it.
Woo!
It's getting spooky. He up
I
to some Dracula
I
shit.
do like the Dracula business. What I was gonna say earlier when we were talking about how much we love the beginning. I do deeply love the beginning, but I see already the sort of dynamic presence Jonathan Frid is having. Like, he brings something to it that is that little spark. It feels a little more engaging, a little less slow. That said, I'm still deeply fond of those episodes, but I can completely see why bringing him in and changing the tone improved things and bumped the ratings up and got everybody excited for the spooky.
For sure. I'm real into all this. I just
Yeah.
was also real into
Yeah.
it before.
Well, it's
I don't think one is better than the other. I think
like
they're both equally appealing.
I like the Maltese Falcon and I like Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Jane Eyre.
Yeah.
and Turn of the Screw.
Exactly. Like,
and Count of Monte Cristo.
yeah, like
Yeah.
I'm good with a variety. But not everybody's going to be in for that. But he's lovely. Every time I see him and I think he's hot, I always think of your Gomer Pyle thing, and it makes me laugh. But
He does look a bit like sexy Gomer Pyle.
you can find us at Ghosts Want You Dead on Instagram and Threads and Blue Sky.
And YouTube and Reddit.
Yes, both of those. And you can contribute and join and get extra bonus things if you subscribe to our Patreon at ghostwantyoudad at patreon.com. This program is brought to you by Amy, Austin, and Jacob. We appreciate you.
Thanks.
We're hanging up now.
We have to go record a bonus episode
And eat
after we
pizza.
eat our pizza. Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.